Good morning, guys. You know what time it is. It's time for tactics. Hey, so welcome to the Tactics with Trav YouTube channel where we focus on this component of the game. So I like to liken it to football, where speed and agility are incredibly important, right, in order to be good. But speed and agility by themselves don't make you a good football player. They're just really important components. And the reason I like to focus on this component or these two components of tactics and calculation is because it's a lot more fun when you play this way, and it allows for quick wins. So if we liken it to sports again, it's like ripping off a huge run or being able to outrun the other guys on the team. So if you play that way, it's also really exciting for other players to watch. It's a lot more just interesting to play chess this way. So I played in a tournament a couple weeks ago in Minnesota called the 133rd Minnesota Open, and it's their largest annual tournament of the year. And lots of players, like 250 players. They had a bunch of sections, and the top section was the open section, which is basically 2,000 and above, and that was FIDE rated as well. And then 1,600 to 1999 was the section I played in, which is the amateur section. Good players, not the best, but still good. I think we're better than like 98% of players that play chess, but we're always aspiring to do more. And so my personal goal is to get to 2,200. So how I'm going to do that? Tactics and calculation. So going to that tournament, my round 5 game was a great game to showcase this. Just a lot of tactics and fireworks and a lot of cool ideas that you'll learn from as well. So no matter what rating you're at, unless you're like a master already or higher, I think you're going to get value out of this game. So this could be experts and below. Anyone that's 2,000 or below is going to get a lot of value out of this. So my opponent was a 1729, and he started out the game with E4, and I responded with C5, the Sicilian, and then he started with C3, which is the Alpine Sicilian variation. So his plan is to go D4, claim the center, and then C takes D4, C3 takes D4, and boom, white owns the center. So we don't want that. We want to fight for central control. We want to fight for center squares. And this immediately reminded me of this CD in the 90s called Chess Master. And you old guys like me probably remember this CD, but it was like Chess Master like 3000, or maybe it was 8,000 at the time. I don't know. It was like late 90s. And there was this personality on Chess Master called Shakespeare. And every time I played the Alpine Sicilian as white, he immediately played D5, which makes a lot of sense. So when you play D5, E takes D5, queen takes D5, and now I claim the center with my queen, but white can't get my queen off D5 with knight C3 because the pawn's on C3. So what do? D4. This is exactly what happened in the game. C takes D4 and C takes D4. And white is left with an isolated D pawn, which I don't think that's very good. I think this is still a common line for white. So it's probably not that bad, but positionally speaking, I think it is better for black. If you remove all the pieces, black would have a better pawn structure going into the end game. So after that, I played knight c6, which is very Chigorin-esque. So if you've ever played the Chigorin defense against d4 players, it's very similar to this. I'm going to put pressure immediately on the d4 pawn because, like I said, it can't be supported ever again by another pawn. So he plays knight f3 and supporting the d4 pawn. And so just like the Chigorin, I played bishop to g4, threatening to take the knight and win the pawn on d4 if he doesn't do something about it. So because of this, he plays knight c3, counterattacking my queen. And so a nice rule of thumb for all levels, except I can't speak for people that are higher rated than me. I'm like a 17, 16 right now. So if you're like, hey, that's not true, and you're higher rated, then totally get it. But he played knight c3, and I moved queen h5. So I'm adding more firepower on this diagonal. And Stockfish didn't like this move, but this is kind of where you get those human versus computers type things where it's like, okay, computer didn't like it, but I liked it and I still like it. And what's white going to do? H3. He could try to put my bishop to question, but if he moved h3, I'm not going to move my bishop because my bishop is pinning his knight and his pawn is pinned to his rook. So it's not like he's going to take my bishop because I'll take his rook that would be hanging on h1 if you were to do that. So I'm not worried about that. My opponent, a good player, he's not going to play h3 here. He plays bishop to e2, unpinning his knight. So after that, I play e6 because I got to do something about d5, guys, because d5 is coming and d5 is a threat. So if I don't push e6 and say I castle queenside or something, then d5 is coming, and that's a real problem because what am I going to do? Can't go e5, can't go d4. B4 looks suspect, and so does a5, knight a5, and none of those are good moves because then I got to deal with like queen to a4 coming, and he gains tempo. I got to bring my knight back to c6, so it's just not good. So I got to play e6 to prevent the d5 pawn push. He goes knight to e4, which at the time I thought it was a little slow, but I think he was trying to go knight g3, which he ended up doing. But that's the reason for knight e4. It's just more of a general maneuver to get to g3. But it allows me to keep developing and gain time. So I went knight f6 and hoping that he would trade on f6, because if knight takes f6, g takes f6, and now I got to open g file. And that gets me excited because I'm trying to already attack on the king side, and also taking with this pawn eliminates the squares g5 and e5 for his knight that's on f3. So I know some of you guys, these positional players, are going, oh, you just doubled your pawns, which is true. But it's not always a bad thing. So when you double your pawns, it does open files for your rooks. So there's like two different schools of thought. You're like, hey, I got double pawns for my opponent. And the other guy's going, great, I have an open file for my rook. So kind of a matter of the position and preference and play. So just one of those things you got to play long enough to get a feel for it. So I was hoping he would take, but he didn't. And instead he goes knight to g3, which I thought he was trying to do. So after that, I moved, because he's attacking my queen, got to move it, queen d5. And then he castles kingside. I castle queenside, which is exactly what I want to do, because typically you want to launch attacks on the side opposite of where your king's castled. So bishop to e3, good move, protecting his d4 pawn again, because if he doesn't, maybe bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, and queen takes d4 if he didn't move bishop to e3, because he wouldn't have enough defenders of d4. Bishop to d6, developing my last piece into the game. And then he starts a queenside pawn storm with a4. I go h5, so same idea, but on the other side. Exciting games where we castle opposite sides of the board and attack on the side opposite of our king. Knight to g5. And this is where things get spicy, guys. This is where things get good. So knight g5 is a threat of what? Knight takes f7, right? Forking my rooks. Well, pause your videos and calculate a really cool sequence that we can play as black. So again, remember, this is the Tactics with Trav channel. We want to play interesting chess, creative chess, like ways to attack our opponents and do things that maybe aren't as like evident. So what could we do as black that would be a really cool plan to deal with knight to g5? All right, so you ready? So bishop takes e2 to start. We got to clear the scope of this white bishop. And after bishop takes e2, he took with the knight, which I think is probably a little bit inaccurate. And if he took with his queen, it would have been better, but I still don't think it stops my attack. After that, I moved knight to g4, which seems kind of weird, right? So the idea is after knight takes f7, we don't care that our rooks are forked. Bishop takes h2 check, king h1, and check this out. Rook h to f8. So after rook h to f8, we want him to take the rook on d8. We're taunting him. We're tempting him. Please take my rook on d8, because that's what the plan was of knight g5, right? Because he wanted to focus on f7. So after knight takes d8, what piece did we take back with? The queen. So we take back with the queen. And do you see the threat? Queen to h4. And we're threatening checkmating white on h1, because all we got to do would be to move our bishop. And you'd have a discovered check, and king g1, queen to h2 checkmate. So check out how this unfolds. So after knight to g4, he does take on f7. And at this point, I just looked across the table, and my opponent's just like, oh, you just let me fork you? And so it was just kind of funny, because you're playing over the board. This isn't online. Like, you're playing across from somebody. Tournament chess is a lot more serious. People are in it to win. So I played bishop takes h2 check, like we talked about, king to h1. And we're like, all right, go ahead and do it. Take my rook. So rook h to f8. And he obliges. He's like, okay, I'll take your rook. I just got 5 points for the 3 points. And so we took back with this. But look at the threat, guys. This is really bad for white. Yes, he's up material, but it's momentary, and this attack is really, really bad for white. So why does g3 not work? Because I'm trying to go queen h4, right? Pause your videos. What would black do if white moved g3 to prevent queen h4? Okay, ready? So if g3, the queen goes back to d5 with check, which is really, really nasty for white. I mean, they're almost checkmated. What do they got to do? Or what can they do? f3? That's the only move he has. If g3, queen d5 check, f3, and then what? Knight takes e3, forking the queen on d1 and the rook on f1. So then the queen's got to move to either d2 or c1, in which case we take the rook on f1. And it's ironic, because the knight defends the bishop on h2 from f1. So then his queen, if it went to c1, would have to take back, or if it was on d2, the rook on a1 would have to take back, and then we can move our bishop out of the way. But his position would be in shambles. So g3 doesn't work. So my opponent sees this. He's a good player, and he plays knight to g1 instead, with the idea of knight to h3, which would be a solid defense, because it would block my queen's visibility and attack down the h file after queen h4. So how do we stop white's idea? We take the knight. We remove the defender. So another common tactic in chess, removing the defender. So we take out the defender with bishop takes g1. King took back on g1, and here she comes, queen h4, threatening queen to h2 checkmate. So these are the exact moves that occurred. So what can white do? What can white do here? How does white prevent being checkmated? Only one move. Rook to e1. So that's what he plays. Good move. And I go queen to h2. Check. King to f1. And then I thought for a good 5 minutes here, trying to think of a good follow-up, because it's really tempting to look at knight takes e3, check, forking the king and queen, because you're like, oh, the f2 pawn is pinned. But it doesn't work, because the rook just takes. So I was trying to juggle some sort of like combination here, some quick way to checkmate white, but he escapes by the skin of his teeth, so it doesn't work. I have to play queen h1 check. He goes king to e2, and then I got into a deep think again here because I was thinking of ways to keep my attack, um, just to keep it going and keep it dangerous for white. But really, what I came up with was just playing it a little bit safer. Our queen is on pre on h1, so we got to take the pawn here on g2. But I mean, look at white's position, guys. So yes, we lost the rook, and we have a knight and the pawn in exchange. But white's king is running for its life. So it's great compensation, and we have all the initiative. So queen takes g2, and let's see what white did here. Okay, queen b3. So now he's trying to counterattack, get something going for himself, attacking my e6 pawn. And if he did, he'd be taking it with check. So I thought long and hard here as well, because I'm like, okay, knight takes d4 check might be a move that works, because if bishop takes d4, then I have queen to e4 check. And I was trying to juggle some combinations, guys, for like a while. It took like 20 minutes. I did a deep think on this one. And it just doesn't work, because after queen e4 check, he can just go back with his bishop. Bishop just blocks with bishop to e3, stunting all combinations. And I'm like a 2300, almost 2350 puzzles rating on chess.com, because it's I love doing puzzles. I think they're super fun, and I like playing that style. But there was really no combination that worked here, and so sadly, but it was a good move. I just couldn't do any sort of razzle dazzle moves that I like to do. But I went to queen to e4. Yep, because I had to protect the pawn. I had to be wary of that too, of his queen taking my pawn. So I went queen e4. And so he plays king d2. Good move. Getting his bishop unpinned for my queen, because knight takes d4 was a real threat there. So that was another thing too, is in addition to defending my pawn, I was also pinning his bishop so that I could try to fork him by taking the pawn. So king d2 avoids that, and then I play king b8, which was a good precaution move, because it gets my king off the c file, because I got to be worried of rook a to c1 in any sort of counterattack he can generate down the c file. And then I got then he has like d5 to try to exploit the pin on my knight, things like that. So just a good move to kind of get my king off the path of any rook that could come to the c file, and also avoids any sort of checks coming from white's queen. Queen d3, trying to trade queens. Now, technically, we're down material, right, guys? So should we trade? No, we should not. So whenever you're down, typically you don't want to trade. It's going to hurt you, because it's harder to. They're going to be able to even out the game with a trade. So with this, I avoided it. Went queen d5. He tries to trade again. He goes queen b5, and trying to trade the queen. So then I go queen to g2, but there's a little bit of a plan with g2. So I had an idea that struck me, and I was like, okay, if I go queen g2 and he goes, let's say, rook g1, which would be really like kind of the obvious move or the tempting move for white, what's a cool way that we can kind of keep our attack going and kind of accelerate it more? Okay, you ready? So if rook g1, we would sack our rook on f2. Rook takes f2 check, bishop takes f2, and queen takes f2 check. Then the king's running again, running for its life. And then queen probably takes on d4, maybe with check. So that was kind of my plan with queen g2, in addition to just getting away from white's queen. So, he does it. He goes rook g1. And so this is where the attack picks up again. Rook takes f2, check. Bishop takes f2. Queen takes f2 check. And king went to c3. And I took on d4 with check. King went to b3. a6. So this is kind of the quiet move in the attack, but it was a necessary move to get his queen off this half of the board and probably over here. Was hoping that just to get him away so I can kind of try to checkmate white if I can get the white queen away. Queen takes h5. And queen to b4 check. Yep. King to c2. And, he probably should have gone to a2, but going to c2 allowed me to get my other knight into the game with knight to e3 check. And king to d3. Queen to b3 check. And he went to e2, king e2, knight d4 check. I mean, look at this, guys. My knights are in the center of the board, checking white's king. We're chasing them around. I got the 2-knight advantage. I love saying that. It's not a real thing. It's a 2-bishop advantage, but I like knights, guys. Knights are super tricky. You can pull off a lot of tactics with them. They're just great pieces. King to f2. And knight e to f5. Kind of a dual purpose move, opens the rank open for my queen, defends the pawn on g7 for the time, and both knights kind of defend each other. King to g2. He's just running, guys. He's just no pawn cover at all. Queen takes b2 check. King to h1. And knight to g3 check. I did like this move too. It's kind of a cool move because it's a deflection tactic. Well, it's a knight fork, right? But it's also a deflection tactic. So what defends the rook on a1? The rook on g1. So by doing this, we force the exchange. We win the exchange because he has to get rid of his rook with this, which allows me to remove the defender of this rook. So then I hit him here with check. He chose to come back with rook to g1, and then I took out his last pawn since my queen's under attack with queen takes a4. So here he plays queen e5 check, and I chose to go to a8 instead of a7 because I didn't want to deal with the queen to c5 check, just kind of gaining tempo for him and wasting time. Rook takes g7. And I'm proud of this move too, guys. So try to find one really good move for black. Or what's the best move? All right, so it's not queen d1 check and it's not queen a1 check because those aren't as forceful as this. So I went queen to c6 check, which is kind of tricky too because if king to h2 or king to g1, then you fork the king and queen with knight to f3 check. So he can't allow that, and he sees this too. So he moves rook to g2, just pinning his rook because otherwise he's going to get forked. So after that, we move knight to f3 anyway, attacking the queen. And this is the last mistake by my opponent, but he plays queen to e3. And pause your videos. How do we finish the game? What's the next move for black? That's right, knight to h4. So whenever you have a pin piece, it's a good idea to attack a pin piece. And no matter where he moves his queen next, we're going to take, or queen takes g2 check, and queen probably takes back on g2, knight takes g2, king takes g2, and now we have a king and 3 pawns versus a king. So we're going to win the endgame. And so after this, my opponent resigned. And anyway, guys, I just thought this was a perfect depiction of like how my channel is. Like all my games are like this. They're all explosive. There's a lot of traps. It's just fun chess to play. And I really encourage you to come back, watch more of my videos because almost all my games are like this. this. So watch this next video here in the same tournament with another really good sequence of tactical ideas so that you can implement into your own games. All right, guys, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.